Social Studies Teaching Methods by David Kimball. So, this would be a list of different teaching methods that I find really helpful. And basically, we're going to go through some of these, and they should help out with the teaching process and just give some different ideas of how to approach teaching important lessons in social studies. The first one is the field trip. I know this is like a class favorite, but for me, I just have to say, myself, I have ADHD, so sometimes getting information orally or just through text, I just didn't hang on to it. When we did things like field trips, that was something that I would hang on to for the rest of my life. And like I say in the slide here, this can be anything. Basically, you could just take your students right outside of your classroom and go walk around and observe the different social interactions that happen in the neighborhood you're in, things like that. It could be anything you put your mind to. I remember when I was a kid, we went to we called it the Little Schoolhouse. So basically, it was a day, I think we were in second grade, where you had to dress up as though you were a student from that time. And we all went back to this preserved schoolhouse that was used back in the 1800s here in Sioux City, Iowa. And we just got to live a day in their shoes. We used quilted pens and, just the slate boards, things like that. We took turns sitting on the dunce chair. It was just really interesting. And I'll always remember that because it was amazing to me to see how far we had come. And that was my first lesson towards that. Then we'll move on to inquiry-based. Inquiry-based is great. I mean, this is, just basically unlocking the Sherlock Holmes of everybody. You want questions to be asked, and you find that through asking questions, you are actually learning a lot more. You're figuring it out. You're seeing how things were. And yeah, like I say, it gives students a chance to get to the bottom of something. So, you could say, slavery was abolished after the Civil War. And then you could have your students look into it. Why was slavery bad? If it was up to you, would you abolish it? Things like that. You want them to see, not just that it was a standard put out there, but you want them to understand why it was bad, why it happened, why we made the change, why we are what we are today. And through them just asking those important questions of, why did this happen? How did this happen? What can we do to never make that happen again? Or what can we do to improve upon this? Those are all the questions that are great. So you can choose any lesson for this. It's just basically allowing the children to jump into, what their thoughts about it, why they think it goes that way, and it's a great way to teach them the right way of viewing things. Retelling a story. Now, this is another great one because this allows children to kind of pick out a time that they find interesting. The lesson as you would teach it would be that you would want to tell them to, you could pick anything of your choosing. Me personally, I would say something along the lines of, anything that happened in education. Like, we would want to know, going as far back as like the mid 1800s, what improvements have been made in education. So the children could kind of look into that and see, oh, they came up with the computer, and that has changed the world of education. things like that, just going from an ink quill to an actual pen, um, you know, just even those minor things, they could get the chance to just grab one of those situations that happened and give their own version of how they think it went down. Kind of through their own research, they can talk about, why that change took place. So it's important because it works on their processing memory, and it also allows them to be creative and tell a story in their own words. Now, this is another great one, because this one is kind of like retelling a story, but this is more of just trying to put yourself into the situation. And this is done as a class rather than as individual. So basically, the teacher would come up with a situation. Let's say it was, and I remember this from being in school. This is a good example. We were reading there was a script made for the story of Anne Frank and how she, hid in the attic of this house and the celebrations that her and her family would go through. Well, there was a script written out for this, and I remember in the classroom we picked out different children to play different parts of her family, and we went through until they got caught, the entire diary of Anne Frank. So that was really interesting because you got to actually read the words that were said by these people that came from her diary. So it really gave us a feel of that time and what it was like to be in the shoes of those people, even just a little bit. So that's a great one as well, and you can choose any story. Just make sure it's significant in history and with social studies, and yeah, you can kind of go in multiple directions with that. Presentation. Obviously, we all know this is a great way to get kids into, their creative side, just kind of showing what they know about a subject. This would be a little more broad, as far as what they would cover. So for a presentation, you can choose the life of a significant person, or you could choose a time in history, but it has to have some detail to it, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And, it's up to each student to show their creative side. Like I say, with my presentations in my classroom, I will, that'll be part of the rubric, will be, their creative side, showing that they didn't just put text on a page and hand it in, that they, had some thought behind it, and they wanted other people to feel what they were trying to show. So presentations can be anything as well. You can choose any topic. You just have to kind of create guidelines for it. You could even, with presentations, have students hand in their ideas before they create their presentations, so that you as a teacher can say, I approve this, or no, that's a little too extreme. Let's try and pick something, a little more appropriate. Yeah, these are great. These encourage students to use their artistic side, so they can kind of go crazy with this one, and they teach a lot because students love listening to their peers talk about things. They're more relatable when it's coming from their peers' mouth. And also, just by them doing the research and trying to pique the interest of their peers, will open up their mind to retaining more of that information. Creating a hook. Now, this one I liked because it's just that, it's kind of leading them on, but not in a bad way, it keeps them kind of guessing. Well, what do I think? Now, with this lesson, I use an example in the slide here that says, you can ask a question like, yeah, did you know that Einstein he didn't do well in school? He was actually considered not a very smart person when he was going to school. And, everybody knows who Einstein is, and I mean, he is a hugely historical figure who, his ideas and stuff have changed the world. So they'll hear this and they'll say, "What in the world? There's no way." You know, that guy was always smart. Now, so not only does this give them a good lesson of how to use your brain and how to use your own talents, um, it's a good lesson in keeping them kind of they want to know that bit of information. That's the hook. The rest of it is guiding them along, saying, okay, we'll definitely go over that part of it, but first I want to tell you a little bit about his early life, what kind of led him to that. And then they get more of an idea of why he would be considered that way and how things were taught back then compared to now, and how strict school was. And Einstein himself, he was a bit of a rule breaker. He wanted to go outside of the box and create things there. Now, challenging with opposition is a great one too, because basically as a teacher, you're going to give a student a topic. Now, for this way of teaching, you let the students kind of dive into that topic. They do what they can to study it. They create their own opinions about it. Let them do that. Let them have, a one-sided way of looking at this. Like, let them do that, because the point of this lesson is to show them how opposing opinions work, how that exists, how it's not just one way because you read it on an article that you respected. There are other people out there that have just as good ideas and can challenge some of this stuff. So basically that's the way you're teaching. I mean, you could have them, look up the Catholic religion, and they might go to sources that are all funded by the Catholic religion, and they would say, oh, the Catholic religion is great, it's done all this, it's done all that. And then as a teacher you could say, yes, but did you know that they used to harm people that wouldn't accept the Lord's name as their savior? So I mean, there's a dark side to it as well. I mean, and I myself am Catholic, so I'm not saying that I think like it's a bad religion or anything like that. I'm just saying that everything has, there's more to look at with every situation, and showing the children the opposing side of things can just open their mind up to the fact that to be knowledgeable in something, you need to be well-rounded with it. You need to know the bad and the good. And that's what this style does. So, and once again, you can use any topic you'd like for that. Then whole class